It's an administrative regulation, not a board policy. Okay. I'll follow up with Lori Holby. Thanks.
Is that Bolin or Bowler? With an R. With an R. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Shall I do it again? Okay. I would like to call the regular meeting of the Board of Education to order at 7:12 p.m. We'll take a moment of silence to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll have the coordinator call the roll at this time.
Ms. Jackson? Mr. Rollins?
Here.
Mr. Scrivano?
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Here.
Dr. Harner?
Here.
Mr. Connor?
Here.
Mrs. Powers?
Here.
With 6 present, 1 absent, we have a quorum.
We will now recognize and celebrate outstanding contributions of students and staff, and Mr. Earl Dutson Jr. will make the presentation.
Good evening and thank you. Congratulations to the Spring Creek Eagles Blue Team.
Yes.
The team won the Raptor Youth Soccer League Rockford Public Schools Elementary Soccer League Championship for the 2nd year in a row. Defeating Barbara White in October at Swanson Stadium. The team of 4th and 5th graders ended the season undefeated, finishing with 7 wins, no losses, and 1 tie game. The team is coached by Javier Castellan and Gabriel Torres. Congratulations. All right, coaches. All right. Congratulations to the students, their coaches, and to the parents and staff at Spring Creek Elementary School. Their principal, Ray Owens, is also here. So please join me again in giving them a warm round of applause for their achievement.
Okay. Congratulations, way to go.
Congratulations.
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 Good job.
Congratulations.
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 Have fun playing soccer?
Congratulations.
All right, good.
Congratulations.
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 Way to go. Way to go.
Congratulations.
Wonderful job. Thank you for all you've done. Very helpful.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Great job. Great job. Thank you. Hey, great.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you, sir. That is all.
Okay.
Good job, guys. All right.
Great job. Thank you for being here tonight. We will now move on to the petitions and communications portions of our meeting, where we invite the public to make comments. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the rights of citizens to petition their government, as well as provides for freedom of speech. Also, the Illinois School Code requires that there be a time at regular and special meetings for public comment. Thus, we are following those mandates during this petitions and communications portion of our agenda. According to Board Policy 2.230, the public comments portion of the meeting is limited to a total of 30 minutes. The board will not respond to comments at this time. If it is appropriate, you'll be contacted in a timely manner by staff in response to your questions. In order to allow sufficient time for business of the board and to conduct our meeting in an efficient and effective manner, we are requesting that you comply with the guidelines and that are posted, and each speaker will be allowed no more than 2 minutes to address the board. It is not appropriate to address individual board members or individual administrators or discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such open meetings. 2 names will be called at one time, the one person whose time it is to speak, and the person who will speak next. When you are the second person, please come to the front and sit in one of the vacant chairs so that you'll be ready to speak when it's your turn, and I will point out that we have a clock on the wall to help you with your 2 minutes. So we have 4 speakers tonight. Our first speaker is Terry Bowler, to be followed by Elsie Wilson. Mr. Bowler. Yep. Push the button to turn the microphone on.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for letting me come here. The reason I'm here is because I don't think that the district of zone and choice, the district of the zone has hurt my daughter. I've talked to some of the board members and left messages. So I'll just kind of leave it like that. I know that her first day at East High School was horrible. She lost AP environmental class that the East don't have. They just have the regular one. She's going to lose a credit and plus a credit for college. East also don't have a third drama class, which Guilford did. So I would like the board to reconsider the zone and choice. That's all I've got to say.
Okay, thank
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Elsie Wilson, to be followed by Allison Wang.
Thank you, and good afternoon and evening. Today I am saddened about the news that one of your own has been released from working at the district with you. One of the reasons that we don't entice businesses to come to Rockford Region is education. The majority of the school district's students are minority. My feeling was, or is, that we were on an upward swing. Then we let some folks go who were kind of part of up and coming, Vernon Hilton. And then there was Deetra Salas was let go, and now this person. My feeling is this district needs to have compassion with the African American and Hispanic communities. Also, my feeling is one of your goals should be to hire and retain qualified minority persons that work in this district. Role models would be a good reason for this. Looking ahead, consideration should be given to promote an atmosphere where fairness is an equal part of your decisions. Real estate taxpayers shell out the largest portion of the tax bill to Rockford School District 205. 51.64% of all real estate tax dollars come to you. Unfortunately, we may be paying some of you to get us back to the good old days. We are in the 21st century. Sometimes when decisions are made that the thought should be minority is a majority. When dealing with rewards and retaining qualified minority persons, and I'd like to thank you for what I said, and I would hope that some consideration would prevail.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Allison Wang, to be followed by Reverend Anthony Greer.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope that everyone enjoyed their holiday break, but now that we're back, I've heard that some pretty strange things have been going on here. So right here, I have a thermometer. In this room, it is about 70.7 degrees Fahrenheit, and I think we can all agree that it is a very comfortable temperature in here. But this just doesn't seem to be the case in all the RPS 205 school buildings. Apparently, since last December or so I've heard, some schools have been lacking adequate heat. There were complaints from parents about how some classrooms' temperatures were around 60, 50, and even 40 degrees. and the parents were not even notified. I mean, like, I'm no expert doctor, but I'm pretty sure that spending the day in about 50-degree temperature is not healthy and is not a good way to learn. I mean, my own fridge is about 40 degrees last time I checked. And one is supposed to wear a winter coat outside, not inside a building. And I know that we're pinched with an $8.8 million deficit and everything, but we can make a compromise, right? Starting in this very building, how about we turn down the temperature up to about, I don't know, 60 degrees? And it would save some money, right? And you can just layer up that extra sweater and bundle up. And hey, don't worry, sweaters can look very classy. You just never know. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Wayne. And our final speaker is Reverend Anthony Greer.
Good evening. It's been a while since I've been here, but I haven't forgotten you all. And I'm here again to discuss the disrespect and gross behavior of this district, what I would call an RPS 205 lynching of Negroes, how we are letting more African-American males being dismissed from this district. Also, what saddens me is that we had 3 youth in this city that died unexpectedly or tragic death, and our head of administration never showed any type of remorse or compassion. If our sorry mayor could be there, the head of this business could be there as well to show some type of compassion for these babies that went to this school. We didn't send a letter. We didn't send any type of thing. So tonight, as the pastor of Progressive Missionary Baptist Church, a proud member of this community, I'm asking that our head resigns tonight, that he do something right, that this board do something right and allow our community to look like a community, quit looking like a one-sided pale pig. Because it's sickening that this district is allowing stuff to take place. You say diversity is not but maybe 2 or 3 more blacks left. You could have sent Uncle Earl to the funeral. You could have sent Uncle Earl to whatever, but it's only 2 or 3 blacks left.
Sorry, you mean, it's not appropriate for you to address individual
Well, I
administrators.
said uncle. You know, but nevertheless, we still need to be what we say. You say we diverse, I'm not saying it. Everybody's being dismissed. African-American males, who's ever left, female or whatever, you're next. So be ready, because that's in the nature of the beast. God bless you.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any board member comments at this time? Mrs. Powers.
I've thought long and hard, and I've, prayed to my higher power about the deaths of our babies in this community. And so I've decided that it's long enough that I will speak out, because if this board makes one decision and we make mistakes, I will take ownership for my portion. It's all over. It's all over the newspaper. We get people standing up, and that's your right, and we aren't perfect. But I challenge, I implore, I beg Chet Epperson and Larry Morrissey to do more about the weapons in our streets. I am sick of expelling students for having weapons in school, and I am sick and tired of students having to attend funerals of their fellow students. I'm sick and tired of it. And it starts with Mayor Morrissey and Chet Epperson. Get the guns off the streets. They don't belong in our schools, and I'm sick and tired of losing our babies and our future to random gun violence. I'm done with it. We do everything we can to say that we are a no weapons environment, and we send them out into their streets that they are responsible for, and we are still burying babies, and I'm tired of it. Do more than just showing up to the funeral. Get the guns.
Thank you. Any other board member comments? If not, we will now move on to the consent portion of our agenda item, including the following consent items: the meeting minutes of December 22nd, 2014, and December 9th, 2014, purchase orders, payroll, accounts payable, contracts under $10,000, and travel. And the following bid recommendations: the audio-video intercom system, the Kennedy Middle School asbestos abatement project, and the Auburn High School and Guilford High School boiler asbestos abatement project. The recurring contracts for the Boys and Girls, 21st Century recurring contracts for Boys and Girls Club, the Burpee Museum, Discovery Center, La Voz Latina, Rockford Area Arts Council, the intergovernment agreement with the Rockford Park District for the Camp to the Future 3 for the summer 2015, the Rockford Park District recurring contract, the University of Illinois of Rockford contract, and the YMCA of Rock River Valley contract, and the other consent items including the financial results, the monthly investment report, the closed session minutes release, the REA Memorandum of Understanding for Article 25, and Freedom of Information Log, and the resolution on the signatory on monetary accounts. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Dr. Harner. Are there any consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Dr. Harner.
9H.
9H, okay. Ms. Jackson?
10D.
10D. Mr. Rollins?
10A.
10A. Okay. I will then have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of the consent items not pulled.
Ms. Jackson,
No.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no.
Okay, I will now take a motion and a second to approve item 9H, which is the 21st Century Recurring Contract, University of Illinois, Rockford.
So moved.
Moved by Mr.
Second.
Connor, second by Dr. Harner. Any discussion? Did I say that? I'm sorry. Mr. Rollins? Okay. Now I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of item 9H, the University of Illinois Rockford recurring contract for 21st Century.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Abstain.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson? The motion passes with 5 yeses, 1 no, and 1 abstain.
Okay, I will now take a motion and a second to approve the item 10A, which is the financial results.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Connor, second by Mr. Rollins. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Rollins.
I just pulled this because I had a couple of questions. In the executive summary, or whatever it's called, background analysis. So in the explanation about salary and benefit expenditures, I'm just not following the math, and I was hoping to get an explanation. It says that at November 30th, 2013, the district reported 3,783.85 FTEs. At November 30th, 2014, the corresponding numbers were 3,744.11 FTEs. And then it says filled positions have decreased by 65.27 FTEs during the current period when compared to the prior year. I can't get those numbers to add up, so could somebody explain to me where the 65.27 came from?
Yes, I can explain. Excuse me. Good evening. In comparing the November 2013 to the November 2014 numbers, the 65.27% positions is actually the filled positions, and that number is actually not in the report. So an example would be filled positions in November of 2013 was 3,590.42, and then November of 2014 was 3,525.15, hence the 65 position difference.
Okay, thanks. And then the second question I had under supplies, it says additional raw material for tradesmen have been purchased for ongoing projects totaling $521,600 year to date. Is that, I guess the first question I've got is that all part of the facilities plan, do we know?
No, in that supplies account, majority of those are based off of the work tickets generated by the buildings that the trades would buy their supplies for. It's for ones like Springfield Electric, Columbia Pipe, Granger, things of that nature.
Is that all part of the budget, though, for this year?
Yes.
Did we budget an increase then in maintenance?
Yes, in the supplies and the repairs and maintenance account.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. McCulloch?
Could you please ask the person who gave the answer to introduce herself and her position?
Stacy, you want to introduce?
Please?
Okay.
Thank you. I mean,
Hello, yes, my name is Stacy Talbert Scott, and I'm Executive Director of Budget and Purchasing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion on the financial results? Not, I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of item 10A, financial results.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch? Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Well, I'll take a motion and a second to approve item 10D, which is the REA Memorandum of Understanding for Article 25.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. Questions or discussion? Ms. Jackson?
So I guess I have the executive summary in front of me, but I'd like for someone to speak to this, please.
Ms. Hoadley?
What this memorandum of understanding does is it clarifies language within the sick leave policy. TRS has currently penalized the district over the years, ranging between $30,000 to $60,000 plus each year because of the terminology within the current contract language. So this fixes that issue, so it provides a benefit to the school district by changing or clarifying the language. The second thing that the Memorandum of Understanding does is it reflects current changes to the school code and also then complies with the FMLA. Prior to this memorandum of understanding, adoption leave would be unpaid. What this does is it says, yes, you can use your sick leave as you would if you had a child born, or so adoption is considered the same.
Okay, so we have a couple of pieces of paper. So one, it's effective August 1st, 2013. Is that when we first amended this agreement, or what am I?
I have electronic, so I'm sorry. Which, are you looking at the actual memorandum of understanding?
Yes.
It would be, yes, it would backdate it to August 2013, and it would cover one particular leave of absence that we had for adoption.
Okay, and so is that where we're coming with the dollar amount of $45,000? Where is that coming from?
In the executive summary, I think that's kind of misleading because it's really saving the district money. It was averaging between the $30,000 and $60,000 because the sick leave already is something that has been an earned benefit, so it's accrued, so it allows teachers to use it. It just provides another mechanism for it to use. So the $45,000 was the average. The actual amount saved for 2013 would be $35,000, but it's ongoing every year. Now we would be saving money.
Okay, so this is, and one employee you said is impacted by this change?
Ms. Granith has indicated there are actually two. I'm aware of one that goes back to 2013. The one does.
And so does it give them credit for, I mean, how does this
It allows
help?
them to apply for the paid leave time up to 30 days, paid leave, using their accrued sick time, though.
From 2 years ago? Correct. So this was effective 2013, and it's going back
Correct.
then?
Correct.
To help employees now in 2015?
It's correcting some issues, but I think the second one is probably recent because I know of the one that was back in 2013.
Will this come back again? So it's coming back every year? It's not just one amendment to the contract, is it?
No, this would fix that.
Moving forward?
Yes.
Any other questions on this agenda item? If not, I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 10E, which is the REA Memorandum of Understanding for Article 25.
Mrs. McCulloch?
yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson? Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
I thought Ms. Jackson's answered. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Hearing. I'm getting old. We're now at the closed session consent agenda items, including the following items under closed session for salary adjustment for legal counsel, HR organizational report, and professional development report, and the following student discipline in which expelled or suspended students are prohibited from being on school grounds and school-sponsored activities without the prior written permission of the principal. The following student, JEP 12, is expelled for the remainder of the 2014-15 school year. The recommended expulsion for AMW 13 and CLP 15 are held in abeyance contingent upon a conditional probationary agreement for the remainder of the 2014-15 school year and the first semester of the 2015-16 school year being executed on or before the next board meeting. The following student, MNM 14, is expelled for the remainder of the 2014 school year and the first semester of the 2015-16 school year. And the following students have been granted a CPA conditional probationary agreement: RD1, AC2, DC3, DJ4, IC5, TLH6, JLB7, WJ8, PRD9, and DSY11. Is there a motion and a second to approve the closed session consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Dr. Harner. There is no discussion. We'll have the coordinator call the roll on the, I'm sorry, are there any items that any board members would like pulled?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Jackson?
11, 12, 13.
11, 12, and 13. All of those under those?
Yes.
Okay,
Could you do 12 and 13 together, please?
okay. Will do. So I will now take a motion, since those are all three of the items. I will have a motion and a second for the approval of 11, which is the salary adjustment for legal counsel and HR organizational report and professional development report.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of items 11A and B.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
No.
Ms. Jackson?
No.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses and 2 nos.
And I'll take a motion and a second to approve both items 12 and 13, student discipline.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Rollins, second by Mr. Connor. And I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of the student discipline reports under 12 and 13.
Mrs. Powers?
Abstain.
Ms. Jackson?
Abstain.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses and 2 abstain.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our next agenda item, which is the superintendent's report by Dr. Jarrett.
Thank you, Mr. Scrivano. A few things I'd like to mention tonight. One is appreciation for Rock Valley College with the partnership that we experienced this weekend for both girls basketball and boys basketball being included. The All-City Art Exhibit is on the 15th. The facilities tours are coming up for Guilford High School on the 23rd and Jefferson High School on February 7th. Really happy to wrap up our strategic plan on the 24th. And I want to share a specific thank you to our partners of the Park District. We've worked long and hard to come up with an agreement that will be before you for a first reading tonight, and I'm appreciative of their partnership. I know some of them are in the audience, and I think that's going to be good for the community taxpayers and ultimately for our students that will benefit from that shared services agreement. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Mr. Scrivano.
Thank you. Ms. McCulloch, you may proceed with the Education Committee report.
Education Committee has not met since the previous board meeting. We have a meeting scheduled for February 2nd in this room at 5:30 p.m. That ends my report.
Okay. Mr. Rollins, the Operations Committee report.
The Operations Committee did meet in this room on January 6th at 5:30 p.m. It was a relatively short meeting. We received ERP updates from Mr. Weisman. Those are just updates on some of the software implementation that they've been doing in connection with SunGuard. They've implemented an eSchool Plus module, which allows families to access some student records through a mobile application through their cell phones. I think that allows them to get information on their students' attendance and grades and some discipline information. They've implemented Performance Plus Student Assessment Manager and successfully negotiated a $30,000 reduction in the maintenance and support costs for the 2015 fiscal year. They've implemented the Business Plus Business Operations Systems and the IEP Plus Special Education Information System. If anybody has questions on those, I suggest they ask Mr. Weisman. We then got a report from Mr. Schmidt about nutrition services. As we've talked about, I think, on the board, and as we know, we lost money in nutrition services for the past 2 fiscal years, a little over $1 million a year. And so Mr. Schmidt gave a fairly comprehensive report. We could see that our labor costs per unit of revenue have gone up significantly over the past couple of years. The Nutrition Services Department is focusing both on reducing costs, but also on trying to increase revenue in that department. And one of the things that he talked about at the end briefly, there will be a more full report to the Operations Committee in February, is the administration is looking at whether or not it's desirable to apply for, excuse me, something called the CEP, the Community Eligibility Provision, pursuant to which we would serve free lunches and breakfast to all students. There's a federal program that provides funding for that. Other than that, I can't tell you much about it because we will have a fuller explanation of that at the February Operations Committee meeting. We then received a report about our reserve policy. The policy that we adopted requires that we maintain at least 25% of our operating budget in reserves, or an amount equal to 25% of our operating budget, which is defined by the policy. The policy suggests that that be looked at every June 30th at the end of every fiscal year. We asked for an update on where we were at on that. We received one. Currently, for this past fiscal year, where we landed was about 28% after transferring $50 million of reserves to the capital plan. The budget for the current fiscal year is also at 28%. You know, one of the topics that we discussed, or one of the items that we discussed, you know, if the dollars remain constant as our operating budget grows, that percentage is going to naturally decline. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that because we are actually starting to brush up against the 25% that we were required to maintain in accordance with the policy. And of course, that reserve policy that we adopted has been instrumental in getting us the good bond ratings that we've gotten. So it's reduced our borrowing costs in that way. And it also, by maintaining those reserves, we avoid having to issue tax anticipation warrants to meet our operating expenses, which also reduces our interest costs. Under other topics, Mr. Connor requested that we consider having monthly status reports on IT implementation projects, major IT implementation projects. The board has approved in the recent past implementing a number of major projects. It was his suggestion that we have regular monthly status reports on where we're at in the implementation of those projects. The committee as a whole thought that was a good idea, and I believe the administration is going to begin doing that. We will next meet in this room on Tuesday, February 3rd at 5:30 p.m. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Connor, did you have a question?
Not a question, just one quick comment. In the ERP update, I want to let people know that the district has done a good job in the managing of software. There was a cooperative effort done for special education software with other districts. So that was both a cooperative effort to leverage software, saved us a little money. So I'd say kudos to to Mr. Weisman and the IT staff and the education staff that were involved. It's a good trend.
Thank you. Dr. Harner, the Facility Plan Oversight Committee report.
The Facility Plan Oversight Committee report has not met since the last board meeting, but we will be meeting a week from tonight, January 20th at 7 PM in the fourth floor board meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
January 20th at 7.
Correct.
All righty. We are now on to the action items for tonight's meeting. And our first action item is the PDAE grant evaluation contract with the University of Illinois Rockford. Is there a motion and a second to approve this grant?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor. Is there a second? Ms. McCulloch? Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion? The coordinator then call the roll on the approval of 16A, the PDAE grant evaluation contract with the University of Illinois, Rockford.
Ms. Jackson? Mr. Rollins?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Abstain.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers? The motion passes with 5 yeses, 1 absent from the vote, and 1 abstain.
Our next action item, I'm going to combine items B through I, and that are the teaching artist contracts, unless anyone wants those pulled separately. If not, I'll take a motion to approve items B through I.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Dr. Harner. Any questions or discussion? I'll have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of items B through I, which are all teaching artist contracts.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers? Excuse me, Mrs. Powers, I didn't get to. Oh, thank you. Ms. Jackson? The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 absent from the vote.
Thank you. Our next action item is the resolution providing for the issue of not to exceed $20 million in general obligation limited school bonds, Series 2015, for the purpose of altering and reconstructing school buildings and purchasing and installing equipment therein for fire prevention and safety, energy conservation, and school security purposes, and providing for the levy of a direct annual tax to pay the principal and interest on said bonds. Is there a motion and a second to approve the resolution providing for the issue of not to exceed $20 million in general obligation bonds?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Rollins.
I think Ms. Noble is here to answer questions. I really just wanted to say the same thing she said last time. So it's my understanding that, originally the way we modeled the revenue for the facilities plan, we were going to issue $15 million in life safety bonds. This is for $20 million. 18 million? Maybe it was 18 million. It was 18 million, sorry. That's what happens when you do things by memory. And my understanding, my recollection is that you had indicated that you were conservative in your first estimating, and your conclusion is that we can issue the 20 million for the same debt service levy that you were initially modeled for the 18 million?
That's correct. The interest rates are a reasonable amount lower than our original projections due to a rally in the market and to conservative modeling 2 years ago. So yes, we have room to add that additional 2 million and maintain the tax rate at the same projected level.
Okay, thanks.
If I could share one additional piece of information, just for your information, today we did learn from Standard & Poor's that the district's AA- credit rating has been affirmed.
Great.
So you are to be
Good.
commended on
Thank
that. The district's financial strength and management and the stability in the board and the leadership that you all have shown were all factors. We will have a draft report from S&P tomorrow that we will share with the administration, and once we have the final version, it will of course be shared with you. But congratulations. It makes a big difference when you're selling almost $60 million worth of bonds, so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great news. Any other questions? If not, I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of item J, which is the resolution providing for the issue of not to exceed $20 million in general obligation limited school bonds.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson? Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
The vote passes with 6 yeses and 1 absent from the vote.
Thank you. Our final action item is the item K, which is 16K, which is the resolution providing for the issue of not to exceed $39 million in general obligation school bonds, Series 2015, for the purpose of building and equipping additions to and altering, repairing and equipping school buildings, acquiring one or more sites and improving sites, and providing for the levy of a direct annual tax sufficient to pay the principal and interest on said bonds. Is there a motion and a second to approve this agenda item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. Any questions or discussions on this item? Okay. I will have the coordinator then call the roll on the approval of item 16K, which is the resolution providing for the issue of not to exceed $39 million in general obligation school bonds.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
No.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no.
Thank you. We are now on to new business and other business agenda recommendations. Our first item is the grant acceptance for AEDs, and that is Dr. Wolf.
Good evening, thank you. With changes in school code going into this school year that affect the amount of distance that you should have an AED device in close proximity, like at RESA, if you go out to the soccer fields, you're no longer close enough. So we needed 6 additional AED devices, and there were grant dollars available, so we wrote for and asked for the maximum, which was 50%. It would be up to $932 per device, so the grant would cover half of that, and Mr. Schmidt has funds available in operations to cover that, so we're asking for your permission to accept those dollars.
Any questions or discussion? Ms. Powers?
For the training portion of it that I see is also included here, how are people identified to be trained?
So Mrs. Mary Fisher, our Director of Nursing, works with building principals to ensure that categories of employees, like all physical education teachers, all nurses, all building principals, and then there are additional individuals that get trained as well, so that during REVA basketball and things, we are compliant with the law.
So let's use your example of the soccer field. I mean, I'm guessing the soccer coach, or are we requiring trained people to hang around during soccer games?
Sure, good question. That's where Mrs. Fisher works with the building principals. So in some of the sites, the athletic director says, I'm going to be there for every game, and that individual would be the trained person. When that is not possible, then they go with coaches, and they make sure that they have somebody who can meet that. And our administrators get trained as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the grant acceptance for the AEDs? If not, this will come to us on our January 27th board meeting for approval. Our second new business item is the recommendation for approval of industrial appraisal company contract. Mrs. Talbert Scott will be presenting this one.
As being a member and a part of CLIC, every 10 years, we have to have appraisals done on all of the district's assets. And so this year comes the time where we have to have that service updated, and the vendor that we went with was actually a vendor that was provided to us through CLIC, as well as a vendor that we've used the previous 10 years to also have this service done. Are there any questions?
Okay, very good, thank you. This will, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Jackson?
Can you explain CLIC?
Okay.
Yes, that's our insurance pool or company that we're involved with as part of the school district. So they provide all of our liability, auto, workers' comp, other types of insurance for the district, as well as, of course, our assets.
I asked the same question, thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Powers, did you have another one?
I see where it's, what fund it's coming out of, but was this budgeted? I guess I don't see whether it was budgeted or not.
Yes, actually, it was budgeted for within the financial services budget.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Not, this will come up for approval by the board on our meeting on the 27th of January. And our next and final item for tonight is the internal governmental agreement with the Rockford Park District on facility use, and that's our attorney, Lori Holdley.
This agreement comes before the board consistent with the board policy and request from administration to allow additional time in order to sort out the longstanding collaborative relationship it has had with the Park District. What the agreement does, this IG, it incorporates a lot of long-standing agreements. For example, there was an agreement back in the 90s regarding Lewis Lemon. There's been a long-term agreement regarding RISA and a bunch of others that really didn't have expiration dates. So that cleans up a lot of those issues, makes it consistent with the board policy with a few exceptions, and I'll point that out. The primary one is Lewis Lemon. When Lewis Lemon was developed, it had been the Park District donated land, and it was part of a whole agreement to try to make it more of a community center. And so the Park District has kept it open after school until about 8:30 and has hosted programming there, primarily after-school programs that the majority of RPS students benefit from. So that provides it without any fee at all. The other piece of it is that we need to monitor and ensure that we are having separate facility rental documents entered into and tracked between both parties, because what will happen at the end is that we need to balance out or reconcile. So if either party owes more than, I believe it was 5,000, I'm sorry, we went back and forth, 10,000 to either one or the other, then it would have to be paid. So what this does is add additional work for both parties, I will say, that we have to track and make sure that we are keeping track of that so that we don't overuse, I guess would be the way to put it, overuse one or the other services where we could incur large fees.
Any questions for Ms. Holdley? Mr. Rounds.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look at this in more detail before the next board meeting, but just a couple of initial questions. Under Section 2, Facility Use Policies, we incorporate by reference the school district and park district policies relating to facility use. I guess my concern there is that you might argue that that means that we can't amend those policies, and I wonder if we need to have some language in there. I mean, I think both entities are going to have the ability to amend those policies at any time, so it's going to have to be subject to amendment.
And that is the intent as well, so we can clarify that language if need be. Mr. Bishel, did you want to explain?
Yeah, just briefly. I think near the end of the agreement, there's a provision that says that this document or this agreement does not impair the ability of each district to deal with their policies. However, an adoption of a policy or other agreement that violates this agreement would constitute a default, so that the other party could then declare a default. There's a 30-day notice provision, and it could be cured. But that is the consequence, as it states right now, of changing the policy.
So we're able to amend the policy, but that might constitute a default under the agreement?
Correct.
Okay. The second is more of a financial question. So I see we're obligating ourselves to rehabilitate some tennis courts at Auburn and Guilford. Do we have an estimated expense for that?
Mr. Schmidt?
No, we're working on that right now with the Capital Development Department of the Park District to get some estimates on there. We have one of our project managers doing that right now.
And what's the deadline for those? Is that 2016?
2016, I do believe, yes.
Is that, I'm having trouble doing the math right away. Is that part of the next fiscal year then?
It would actually be the last month of, yes, next fiscal year. We're also looking at some foundation grants from the U.S. soccer communities and some other things to help offset some of those costs too.
Soccer community?
Yeah, it's a weird grant now. There's soccer and lighting and some other things that we're looking at for refinishing, so.
Okay, so I guess my point is, so you'll know, you'll get those estimates and you'll be able to build that into the next fiscal year's budget?
Yes.
And then can somebody just walk me through the in-kind credit section in section 12 and tell me how you envision this working? Well, the whole kind of in-kind credit.
Essentially, what the in-kind credit is, a board policy. I guess, first of all, this applies primarily to the board's Category 2 uses, which is uses by a governmental body. It also includes uses by not-for-profit companies. And in that section of the policy, it provides that fees would not be waived, but the district would consider accepting donations from the user to offset some of those costs. And knowing that the school district and the park district both need and use each other's services and facilities, that the concept is, rather than being a cash flow back and forth for those, that there's an offset based upon qualified in-kind uses. The section includes a description of the types of uses that qualify. For example, for the school district, we use some dollar amount of field setup and striping services by the park district. That would qualify rather than our paying for those, and there would be a credit that would offset against some other use that might come down the road. And as those accumulate, rather than doing it monthly or weekly or however often these things come up, it would be then reconciled, their uses, our uses, at the end of the year. If there was a discrepancy of more than $10,000, then there would be a payment by one district to the other in order to equalize it. That's offset to some extent by the planning process that's required annually, that the district representatives meet and confer on the types of uses they anticipate for the following year on an estimated basis and keep some form of control. These are estimates, so either district may decide not to use a particular facility or service sometime during the year, and so the designated representative would have to keep an eye on those uses as the year progresses in order to try to make sure that they're approximately equal.
Okay, well, if I'm reading this correctly, I guess in Category A for in-kind credit, so events that are in our facilities which are limited to our students and advertised as such are going to be eligible for in-kind credit, but other types of events will not be eligible for in-kind credit? Is that?
Well, under the board, again, this is in-kind credit comes out of Category 2 use. And Category 2 use would be essentially all the uses by another governmental body or, in other cases, by a not-for-profit, with the exception of uses for which participation or admission fees are charged or which are fundraising. That would make that use into a Category 3 use, and no in-kind credit qualifies for that, with one exception. And the exception is under Section 12D, I believe, which talks about programs that are essentially conducted by the Park District and for which admission or participation charges are made, but the program is attended by more than 75% by Rockford Public School students. In that case, there would be an adjustment because of the excess usage by the school district students of that program.
Okay.
Ms. Powers?
I guess my question is more toward administration, that once we approve this, will there be an administrative regulation and impacts to job descriptions or what have you? It makes me a little uncomfortable to just leave it a random designatee will monitor this moving forward. So can we expect that those things will follow?
Dr. Jarrett?
Mrs. Powers, you're referring to who will specifically be the person who is charged with the task of reconciling? Yes, I can make that designation more specific prior to our next agreement. It's
Great.
likely to be Mr. Schmidt or his designee, but I believe that Mr. Parker would probably be part of that conversation. We probably will have a team of people so nothing slips through, but we will make sure we identify a primary point person.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? If not, thank you. This will come up for approval by the board on our January 27th meeting. Are there any other business or agenda item recommendations for tonight? Ms. Jackson?
For the next board meeting, I would like to have an agenda item, a conversation about our student assignment plan. We had a speaker tonight that addressed the zones, and it's actually a speaker that I spoke to. I actually spoke to several parents over the break about how zones have impacted them, and one parent that I spoke with was actually going to have to make a decision where she may have had to give up her custodial rights to make an educational decision in the best interest of her child, which is pretty ironic. So I'd like for us as a board to have a conversation about our policy.
Any other questions or agenda items? If I would like to remind the board that we are having a special meeting on Saturday, January 24th, from 8:30 to 12:30 for our strategic planning retreat. So be there or be square. It'll be at Swedish American in the boardroom, as usual. You'll be square. If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved. A second by Mr. Connor. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 8:09 p.m. Thank you.